Okay. I'm just going to double check that you can hear the Canada Reads audio. Yeah.
It's the Great Canadian Book Debate. I'm your host, Ali Hassan. This is Canada Reads.
This is Canada Reads, Canada's annual title fight.
Hello and welcome to the...
Welcome to Read Chat. But
That's not the
I'm
right
gonna
one.
watch.
Sorry, guys. I swear. I'll get it together. This is my first time doing this. I don't know if it worked last time. So let's just see.
Read Chat.
That's not the
I'm
right
gonna
one.
watch.
Sorry, guys. I swear.
Canada Reads.
Oh, you can.
Oh.
Okay, good. You can hear the audio. Thank you for your patience. I'll get it together. Oh, let me turn this volume
This
up.
is my first.
Okay. Now I'm gonna try.
24th edition of Canada Reads. I'm seated at the classic Canada Reads poker table with the 5 Canadians who make up this year's panel. Over the next 4 days, they will select the one book all of Canada should read. It is a tough task, but they're ready for it. Let's meet them now. On my left is our first panelist. He is a best-selling author from Toronto, known for his gripping thriller novels. He's sold millions of books in Canada and around the world. Welcome to Canada Reads, Linwood Barclay.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm totally pumped. I'm defending Jenny's Boy by Wayne Johnston, and unlike when I was in university, I have read all the books.
Okay, great. Prepared. We'd love a prepared panelist. Next to Linwood is our second panelist. She's a former competitive swimmer who won gold for Canada at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics and has 3 Olympic medals and multiple world records to her name. Welcome to Canada Reads, Maggie McNeil.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to champion Watch Out for Her by Samantha M. Bailey.
All right, sometimes
I
I
really
ask
like
you,
that
which
book.
book are you championing? You guys are right in there. Go right in. I can tell at this table you're ready to go, ready and raring to go. All right, across from me at the Canada Reads table is our third panelist. He is a neuroscientist turned superstar pastry chef from Calgary. He's known as the pastry nerd on social media and shares his passion for French baking with his more than 180,000 Instagram followers. Welcome to Canada Reads, Saeed Mdahoma.
Hello, super excited. I will be championing Dandelion from Jimmy Chai Yu.
Very good. Thank you very much, Saeed. Next to Saeed is our fourth panelist. He's an actor and director from Vancouver who's known to millions of viewers as Lou Fleming on the beloved CBC series Heartland. Welcome to Canada Reads, Michelle Morgan.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. How are you feeling?
I'm good. You know, there's some nerves, some jitters, but I'm really just happy to be here.
I'm sure you are. Tell me about the book that you are, or let me ask you this. You know, you've got, you're a star on the longest running 1-hour scripted drama in Canadian television history. So do you have a strategy for outrunning your fellow panelists on Canada Reads?
My strategy is joy. I really loved reading all these books. I loved my book, and I'm excited to
It's
talk
weird
about
there
it.
not being an
I'm
audience
excited.
since
I wanna
COVID.
try to enjoy this.
Great. Tell us which book
That's
you're
kind of
I'm
weird.
championing Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper.
Terrific.
That was my
Our final
favorite.
panelist is on my right. She's a
readable book.
groundbreaking Plains Cree artist from the
Yeah,
Muscatine
it was-
Reserve.
I cried
She's also a podcaster and
after reading that
advocate
book.
for Indigenous health and wellness. Welcome to Canada Reads, Shayla Stonechild.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
How are you feeling?
You know, last week I was fasting for 4 days.
Yeah.
So if I can go that long without food, I think I can make it through Canada Reads.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us which book you are championing.
So I'm championing A Two-Spirit Journey by Monet Shakabe and Mary Louisa Plummer.
Great. There you have it. We've completed the Canada Reads Circle, our Canada Reads 2025 contenders. So now we know the players. It's time to know the game. Linwood, Maggie, Saeed, Michelle, and Shayla. We're going to go around the table. We will play a trailer for each book, and then you will each get.
And it looks like
60
this
seconds
stage
to
is a
make
lot
your
more colorful than
opening
previous
argument.
years too.
When your time
That's
is
kind
up,
of cool.
I will ring the famous Canada Reads bell, and after your opening statements, it'll be time to debate. And before the day is over, of course, you will cast your very first vote. Well, let's do this. All right, Linwood, you are up first. You're championing the memoir Jenny's Boy by Wayne Johnston. Here's the trailer.
I love these. It's like my favorite part of Canada Reads. Screw the debate.
It's the late 1960s in rural Newfoundland, a place called the Goulds. Wayne is 7 years old. He's frail, sickly, and he can't keep any food down. His protective mother, Jenny, worries he won't make it to adulthood. And while she is forced to go out and work to make ends meet, she leaves him with his grandmother, Lucy. Under her wing, Jenny's boy, as he's mockingly called, begins to show signs of resilience. Grandma Lucy is loving, caring, patient, and funny, and the 6 months Wayne spends with her turn his life around. With a newfound will to live, Wayne not only survives, he thrives. Lucy's tenderness, infectious joy, and wit become the North Star for Jenny's boy, to follow forevermore.
All right, Linwood, you have 60 seconds. Why is Jenny's Boy the one book all of Canada should read?
Well, first of all, Wayne Johnston is one of this country's most fabulous literary writers. He can put more beautiful writing into a first chapter of a book than most of us can put together in an entire novel. Secondly, it's about Newfoundland. It's the most perfect location. It's very evocative. It's very much of its time and the 60s and what the struggle was like for Wayne and his family in Newfoundland at that time. It's in many ways a tragic story, but it also manages to be very funny, and a lot of that comes through in the writing. It's a real kind of, the strength of the human spirit in this novel, and it's also about, if you happen to have a dysfunctional family, and who doesn't, then you will find much that you can identify with in this book. And on top of all of that, it happened. It's a true story. It's very moving. It's wonderful, and best of all, it fits very handily in your hand. It's very easy to carry, and that's why I think that with Jenny's Boy is the best book on the table.
Thank you, Linwood.
We all know my feelings about
size and
nonfiction and
shape,
fiction
when we're
being in
talking
Canada
about
Reads
books,
against
but,
each other.
Why not?
I really don't like
Maggie,
it,
you're
but
next.
Jenny
You're
Boys actually
championing
felt
the
like
thriller Watch Out for Her
a
by
fictionalized
Samantha M.
memoir,
Day. Let's check out the trailer.
the way it was written.
Sarah loves her husband Daniel and adores her young son Jacob, but Daniel is forever at work, and Sarah wants to focus on her photography. So they decide to hire a nanny. Holly is young, beautiful, and good at being a nanny. A little too good. Holly craves being part of Sarah's family, but Holly has secrets of her own. Sarah's family uproots, leaving Holly behind. Soon, strange, eerie things start happening. Cameras hidden in their home. Cryptic texts with 3 chilling words. I see you. Sarah's family is in danger. She doesn't know who to trust or where to turn. Someone is watching her. But who?
I'm not a big fan of thrillers to begin with,
60
and this one
seconds
wasn't
are
that
on
good
the
to me.
clock. Why
Not
is
even
Watch Out
thrilling.
for Her the one book all of Canada should read?
One thing you want a thriller to
Writing
be is thrilling, and this
formed as an
wasn't
outcome of feelings,
thrilling.
fears, challenges, and experiences. Just because fiction isn't real doesn't make it any less true. Thrillers allow the reader to immerse themselves in a different world, time, and place by evoking fear, skepticism, and relief from the comfort of the reader's own surroundings. Provides an additional layer of safety as they step outside their comfort zone and face their fears within the pages. Watch Out for Her is a fast-paced, engaging read that restored my childhood love of reading and getting lost in a good book. The thriller genre found me at the perfect time when I didn't enjoy reading, to now yearning for suspense and a few hours of escape from daily routine. Watch Out for Her is just that. As a book to change the narrative, the accessibility and versatility of Watch Out for Her makes it a book that every Canadian should read. The elements that make a thriller so compelling can be utilized in a plethora of ways, as it can be combined with other genres to engage readers of all tastes. The genre of thrillers is valid and deserves to be here.
to be heard. That's a
If it was a good,
line to sneak in
better
there. And deserves to
thriller,
be
I
heard.
don't
Thank
agree
you,
that it
Maggie.
was fast-paced at all.
Saeed, it is your turn. You're championing the novel Dandelion by Jamie Chai-Yun Liu. Let's check out the trailer.
I did enjoy this book.
When Lily was 11 years old, her mother left. Lily, her sister, and father remained. In a small BC mining town, Lily struggles to understand why, but there are no traces, and the only way to move is forward. Now, Lily is a new mother. Feeling lost and untethered, she begins to look for answers and finds herself on a journey to Southeast Asia to uncover the truth. There she learns that there's always more than what meets the eye. To some, the dandelion is a weed. To others, it's a flower. Beautiful, resilient. It can make its roots anywhere.
Saeed, 60 seconds.
I did
on
throw
the
this
clock.
book
Why is
down at the
Dandelion
ending,
the
though,
one book all
as
of
I-
Canada should read?
Dandelion gives us a peek into the lives of first and second generation immigrants in Canada. The book helps us understand what newcomers experience upon arrival: displacement, uprooting, loss of community, racism, but also many positive things such as beautiful landscape, Canadian multiculturalism, hockey, and obviously beaver tails. Dandelion is great at illustrating the constant push and pull immigrants experience, wondering if you belong to your new country or if it was better back home. The book also talks about assimilation and mental health issues. It's important to fit into Canadian culture, but what do you have to sacrifice to fit in? Is it always worth it? Canada should read Dandelion to have a better understanding of the immigrant experience, the struggles and joys that come with it. As an immigrant, son of immigrants, this book deeply resonated with me. Many Canadians have an immigrant background or immigrant friends, so I'm sure they will relate to Dandelion.
That's an important point.
With 3 seconds to spare. Thank you,
And also
Saeed.
I like his
Michelle,
voice.
You're up. You're championing the novel Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper. Let's play the trailer.
Etta is 82 and dreams of the ocean. She's never been. So one morning, she packs some chocolate, a map, a rifle, and heads toward the water. She can't remember much, but she knows she is going east. Back in Saskatchewan, her husband Otto stays behind, waiting. He saw the ocean during his time in the war, a time he longs to forget. Russell, their neighbor, ventures to bring Etta home. What if she gets hurt? What if she forgets? But Etta has no plans to stop her journey. Tangled memories and unfinished letters reveal their past. Throughout their history, Etta and Otto waited patiently for each other. This time is no different.
Michelle, 60 seconds are on the clock. Why is
I really
Etta
did
and
love
Otto
that
and
book.
Russell and James the one book that
Really
all
well
of
done.
Canada should read?
Like non-linear
This is the
storytelling.
one book Canada should read because we need to be inspired right now, and this book is inspiring on so many levels. For one, it is rooted in important Canadian history. We meet Etta and Otto in a dusty one-room schoolhouse, and through them we witness a farming community struggling through the Great Depression, and then Otto enlists in the Canadian forces on the front lines of World War II, and Etta joins the war effort by working in a munitions factory, reminding us of the strength and the resilience of our nation. This book is inspiring because Emma Hooper has a unique and distinctive way of telling stories, blending history and realism with magic and humor and absurdity. And in a time when the question, what does it mean to be Canadian, is more urgent than ever, we need to celebrate writers like her who are breaking the mold, and they're paving exciting new paths for Canadian literature. This is one book Canadians should read because it inspires us to read actively and creatively, and it challenges how we read, how we think, and how we remember.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Shayla, you're next to me on my right, making you.
I'm not gonna have a lot to say about this book because
the memoir, A Two-Spirit Journey
I did not
by
read
Mane
it.
Shikabe, written with Mary Louisa Plummer. Here's the trailer.
Two spirits live inside you. This is what my kokum, my grandmother, used to say to me. 1952, Umbabaka. I learned to make moccasins with Mom and how to hunt with my stepdad. Grief, abuse, addiction, experiences that stay with me long after I have to leave. 1975, Thunder Bay. I get sober. I come out to my friends and family. Some people don't understand. I lean on the ones who do. 2013, I helped lead the first gay pride parade in the city. I find comfort in nature, in healing, in the memory of my kokum. My name is Mane Shikabe. I am an Ojibwe Cree elder, and this is my story.
Shayla, you have 60 seconds. Why is A Two-Spirit Journey the one book that all of Canada should read?
To find one book that changes the narrative, we must first ask ourselves whose narratives have been missing. A Two-Spirit Journey brings us into the life, the heart, and the resilience of Ojibwe Cree elder Mane Shikabe from Mbambaka, Ontario. Her journey spans generations, navigating important periods of Canadian history, moving from traditional to modern life, from living in a remote community to an urban landscape, from struggling with alcoholism to recovery and sobriety, all while carrying and reclaiming her Two-Spirit identity. Mane inspires readers to be kind to one another no matter where we come from. This book is more than an autobiography. It's a story of survival, of healing, and identity that lingers long after the last page. A Two-Spirit Journey isn't just a book you read and then it fades. It's a book that stays with you and makes an impact on you for a lifetime.
Thank you, Shay.
I'm just gonna pause here just to go on a teensy bit of a rant. And it's something that I've noticed happens over and over and over again in Canada Reads, where it stops becoming about the books. So that's part of my problem with like the fiction and non-fiction things. The first part is like you're comparing someone's life and you're going to be criticizing someone's life. So like that's hard to do, like criticizing someone's life in comparison to a piece of fiction, to like fictional lives, right? So that's an unfair comparison to begin with. But then secondly, it then becomes less about the book, and then about like the what the book represents as a whole. So like, for example, here it and a lot of times it then comes up as holding up one issue over another. And don't get me wrong at all, I am First Nations myself. They're important stories, but it should be about how the story is told, as opposed to like, the fact that the story is told, if that makes sense. So like it's what it feels like sometimes they're pitting up against is like the story of an elderly woman walking across Canada against all of like First Nation issues. And like that's not fair at all. Like, because of course First Nation issues are hugely important. But like, to be honest, the reason I didn't read A Two-Spirit Journey was because I did try. I got through like 45-50 pages, but it is listen, this is no criticism of Achakabee or her story, or their story, at all. It is more about the way that it was written, and it was very dry and very hard to get into. And as someone who has read a lot of First Nations stories, First Nations autobiographies, I really didn't see what more this added. Not that her life isn't worth talking about, it's just the way how it was talked about is what I had an issue with. So if you want to introduce someone to reading and you give this thing that sounds just like a textbook almost, of like, I was born and this happened and that happened, this happened, that happened, that's not going to encourage people to read as much as something that is better written. I hope that comes across in the way that I want it to come across. Let's get back to this. I really hope it doesn't become arguing that, you know, one issue is more important than the other, because the other books, like, okay, yeah, one's about immigration, and one's about like First Nations and Two-Spirit, and all that. But the other three, the three fiction, no, there's two fiction and one nonfiction, don't have as much of a strong, like, social commentary. They do if you can argue it in certain ways, but it's not as strong and relevant in the books. Okay, let's just get back to watching.
There you have it. The 5 titles in the running for Canada Reads 2025. They are Jenny's Boy by Wayne Johnston, chosen by Linwood Barclay. Watch Out for Her by Samantha M. Bailey, selected by Maggie McNeil. Dandelion by Jamie Chai Yun Liu, chosen by Saeed M. Dahoma. Etta and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper, backed by Michelle Morgan.
That title's going to get annoying to say.
Shikabe,
I wonder if they'll shorten it.
A Plumber and championed by Shayla Stonechild. There are 5 great Canadian books on the table, each with the power to change the narrative. By the end of the week, one will be your winner. But by the end of today, one will be eliminated from the show. I'm your host, Ali Hassan. This is Canada Reads on CBC and SiriusXM, and it's time to debate.
I love the theme tune.
I think all of the contending titles on Canada Reads are great books. This is not something that is up for debate. They're all great. They're all compelling and unique in their own way. Canada Reads is a celebration of books, but it is also a debate show. So let's debate. What does your book have that others don't? Becky, let's start with you.
Well, being a thriller, as I said in my opening, you can have it in so many different genres. It's not exclusive to being its own type of genre. You can also have it in romance, you can have it in fiction, you can have it in nonfiction. So it's really applicable and accessible to the reader.
Okay. Michelle, let me ask you what your thoughts are on that, on specifically what Maggie has said.
On that it's accessible. I was also thinking about what I was going to say, Ali, so it's not very fair.
I think we can give you both.
It's not very fair.
The fairness is emanating here at this table. You can have both.
No, it absolutely is accessible. I think if I were to respond to that, I just found it didn't really push the boundaries of the genre, and it was a little too accessible, a little too safe. Was my thoughts.
Maggie, what are your thoughts on that? And I will get back to you, Michelle. What are your thoughts on that?
I can also understand where you're coming from. Definitely, it's an easy read, and I think that's what makes it accessible. But hopefully, by being an easier read than some of the other books, it draws in more viewers and more people to read it that aren't necessarily strong readers or haven't enjoyed doing it in the past. And that's why it resonated with me, because that's the situation I was in when I came upon it.
Okay. Michelle, just hopping back to you, what does your book, since you've prepared it already,
Thank you.
What does your book have that others don't?
Well, I think what my book has that others don't is that the writing is like a wide open prairie rather than a mountain that tells you how to feel. It gives you space to breathe and reflect. And this writing doesn't force you into any conclusion or tell you what it means. It leaves it to you to actively and creatively read, and in that way it's inspiring and it activates.
I agree with that.
Okay. Linwood, how do you respond to what you've heard so far?
Well, I mean, I think it's very interesting that to compare all of these kinds of different books. And they're so different. It's like, which is better, a toaster or a Volkswagen? You know, and they all have their merits. And
okay.
I think that for me, what Jenny's Boy brings to the table that I think in a greater way is that it takes a very human, personal, ultimately inspiring story, but I think elevates it in the writing. That the writing itself is so good, and he's such a good and I was going to say stylist, but I think that one of the strengths that Wayne has as a writer is that he doesn't burden you with style. I mean, I think there's a lot to like about Etta and Otto and Russell and James, but I find, for me, that book had so much sort of stylistic approach to it that it,
I don't think
for
so.
me, kind of took away from it. And yet, there's a lot in it I think that's really well done. But I feel that Wayne writes a book that's very honest, and he's not trying to impress you. He's just telling you a story, but he has such a kind of, I would say, a less is more style.
Yeah, different styles.
That brings
Doesn't mean that one's
story to you
better.
that's very close to you.
Michelle, I think if I can summarize, you're saying that your toaster oven doesn't have a cancel button. It's the old school style. Less is more.
It's better than the Volkswagen.
It's better than the Volkswagen.
You know,
Michelle,
I think that they're similar in that way.
Yeah.
Because I agree that Wayne, he doesn't burden you with style. When you're reading it, you're just in the story, you're in the moment in a beautiful way. But I think Emma's writing is also restrained and simple in that way. There is certainly a style, even visually, but it's not, I don't think it's a style that's like heavy-handed or manipulative. It still leaves the reader with like room to breathe, as I said, and to think and just absorb the material.
Saeed, let me turn to you to bring you in the conversation, responding to what you've heard and to the question about what your book has that others don't.
I think that for Dandelion, one of the things that it brings to the table that other books do not bring is an outsider perspective. What Canada is like for people who coming from outside, and what is it that, because when you're living in a country,
that could be a very strong
in
point.
the country, sometimes you don't even realize what's happening, what people are living through, and that's one of the things that I really liked about Dandelion. And I also think that Dandelion was great at giving you some room to breathe, because yes, there is trauma, but it's not just about that. It's also about things that those immigrants enjoy when they're living in Canada.
Sheila, before we dive into A Two-Spirit Journey, how do you respond to what you've heard at the table so far?
Honestly, I really enjoyed Dandelion myself. It did bring me into an experience far outside my own, and even though I am Indigenous, I could relate to feeling like you're not Indigenous enough or you're not Canadian enough, so I could relate to that. For me, I also felt like the ending, it left me with so many questions, and I just wanted more, and maybe like a further call to action on how to support the mental health stuff that happened throughout the book. It left me kind of with like a very open heart, and so I was just wondering, like, I wish there was more resources to help me sustain that open heart. And Jenny's Boy, on the other hand, it was very difficult for me to get into, to be honest. I just felt like after a few chapters, it felt really repetitive, and I felt like I knew kind of the story after a few chapters. And so for me, I was just hoping for maybe a bit more variety when it comes to the story itself, but also realizing the timeline was like, 6 or 7 months within the child's life. And so for me, A Two-Spirit Journey brings you into 64 years of life, which is no easy task to remember. What my story has and offers readers is the way this book was written was honoring Anishinaabe storytelling traditions, and it was in collaboration with a non-Indigenous author. So I think it's a really good example of what reconciliation looks like and how we can collaborate with Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Because Mary Louisa Plummer is a social scientist and a researcher, and so honoring the Western science, but also honoring Indigenous storytelling, I think is something that we haven't seen on Canada Reads at all.
So, Sheila, you had some thoughts about both Saeed and Linwood's book. Linwood, do you have a response to that about, I guess, the repetitive nature of?
Well, I take that point. I guess it's too bad that during those 7 months, Wayne didn't have more interesting things happen to him other than being so sick. And that's what his life was. Just as in your book, this was what her life was. And I think that sometimes the best memoirs take a narrow focus. I found that, for example, in A Two-Spirit Journey, I remember on one page, there's a description of seeing people engaged in lovemaking for the first time, finding a dead baby, and becoming interested in charcoal drawing. And I thought, any one of those things, I think, could have been a chapter. But they were like, boom, 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 this. It was like a sort of skipping stone going over the water. This happened, and this happened, and this happened. Whereas Wayne has taken time, I think, over this period in his life narrow that focus and to really to dig into it. And I think sometimes the best memoirs try to do a narrow focus so that you can really get a sense of that time, and trying to give you sort of too much in one gulp.
Sheila, your thoughts on that?
It's called a two-spirit journey, so it's going to take you through her journey, and I think healing is not linear, and you go through a lot of challenges, and it is almost like a skipping stone. And so that's kind of what Monet has gone through, and so I think it may be a lot to digest, but then I just think of her digesting those experiences for herself. And for Indigenous people here in Canada, unfortunately, a lot of stories are like that. We've gone through so much that we don't even have time to process what happened to us. Sometimes we just move on to the next thing. And so I think that's, that's how she...
Like, did she just contradict herself that she was asking for more resources from the other book?
I completely agree.
But this one,
Shayla and Linwood
didn't give the resources because it didn't stay too long
on
on enough one.
Of the books that I learned the most from. I wasn't really familiar with Indigenous culture, and listening to her stories and reading about it really kind of showed me a lot and opened my eyes to that. I also liked the format, although I do agree it was kind of this happened and this happened and this happened. I liked the images and the maps and things. I think that really added to the story, so you could really get a picture. But in the sense of Jenny's Boy, and I think this is really challenging about autobiographies because, as we've said, it is someone's life and it's how they see it, whether you agree or don't agree. With Jenny's Boy, I agree it was slightly repetitive, but the thing for me was he made this miraculous recovery, and I wish he had spent a little bit more time unwinding that a little bit instead of 2 pages in the afterword. Like, how did the death of Lucy coincide with him suddenly getting healthy? And that was kind of the big question that I had at the end of the book.
Okay.
A lot of them want like endings and conclusions, as opposed to like these open concepts. It's interesting seeing all the different readers and how they approach the books.
On Canada Reads, we've been working hard to have books that don't usually find genres that don't usually find their place here. Let's dive into Watch Out for Her a little bit more, and tell me what you feel that it offers that other books here don't.
I think there's so many similarities of Watch Out for Her with the other ones. Obviously, it is fiction, so it relates a little bit more to Dandelion and an Otto at that point. But even though it's fiction, there's still so many real-life experiences and things to learn from it. It's about relationships. Everyone in the world is familiar with relationships, whether good or bad, and it focuses a little bit more on the bad, but obviously Jacob the child and his parents, he has a better relationship with them, but relationships is what everyone craves and what the world is built on, and I think that's super important. And additionally, every character in this book has early life trauma, and that is something that is relatable regardless of whether or not it's fiction or nonfiction.
Saeed, I wondered your thoughts on what you've heard, and also Shayla had said earlier that you wish that the book hadn't left with you with such an open heart, or
just very vulnerable. I mean, honestly, some of the stuff hit close to home for me, and so it was a little triggering, but I know like that's a part of healing too, so I recognize that. But I think for example, like just providing a little bit more resources on where people, if they're dealing with mental health stuff, or
but this is a work of fiction,
dealt with someone that had,
and most people have access to the internet.
Where do we go from here? And so I think that's what I was hoping for as a reader, because it is a very sensitive subject.
And it is fiction.
I understand where you are coming from. I think that the author really wanted to not give guidelines as to what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to feel after reading the book. I think she really wanted people, immigrants, to decide what is it, which way will be theirs to heal. Because even if immigrants, we all have a similar story, we're still different. We're still not going to be able to heal in the same way, depending on the culture we're coming from, where we are moving to. So I think that's the reason why you don't have guidelines in the book. And when it comes to Maggie's book, I really liked the pace. I thought it was really, really fun to read. I just wish that I could relate a little bit more to the characters. There was so much happening, and yet I wish I knew a little bit more about the motivations behind their actions, their emotion. Especially like Alexi, we know that she's had a tough childhood probably, but we don't really know why she goes that far stalking and things like that. And I wish I knew a little bit more about that.
There's a lot of questions about
No, I
character
completely
motivation
agree.
in that book.
For example, I really had a harder time with Ed and Otto and Dandelion because of that connection. Obviously, you two have that personal experience, and that's why you chose the book and partially why you really enjoyed it. But I think, for me, I struggled to kind of see how I can fit into that if you don't really have that personal experience.
That's
So
the
I
whole
think
point
the
of
good thing
reading.
about the thriller and Watch Out
To
for
me,
Her
anyways.
is that you can take whatever it is you take from it, whether that's the relationships, whether that's the bonds of family, early life trauma. There's all these kinds of different categories that, if it's not really obvious, it's kind of whatever the reader.
Early
takes
life
from
trauma
it.
in Dandelion happens. Their mother leaves her.
Yeah, I want to say a couple quick things about Watch Out for and Dandelion. I had a lot of time for Dandelion. I thought it kind of started slow for me, but it was so outside my realm of experience as a white guy growing up in Canada. I think that's what kind of fascinated me about it, and I learned a lot from it. I thought the writing was really good, that she didn't try to over-impress you with stylistic, and I also thought that it felt so true. It read like a memoir. You know, if you had just presented it as a memoir, I would have said, okay, it is. And so I thought that was a real strength. Watch Out for Her, I thought, I write thrillers, and so I perhaps came at this with a more critical eye. But I always feel that the best thrillers, plot is everything in a thriller. But what should drive plot is the real characters and who they really are and what their motives are and so forth. And I felt that the characters had to meet the demands of the plot. That the plot was set. So these people have to behave in a certain way to make these things happen. And in that sense, I felt that as thrillers go, it's a fun read. It's a good read. But I felt that in terms of in that genre, there are better examples. Although I'm thrilled that Canada Reads would do a thriller.
All right. We'll leave it there.
That's a good
That's
point.
it for this round.
Yeah, there's genre fiction hasn't always fared well.
Okay.
in
Panelist
Canada Reads.
Reads is a competition. A book will be crowned the winner at the end of the week.
One more quick point. It's going to be interesting because it's coming clear now that some of the contestants, the defenders, are more eloquent and educated. Not that the other people aren't educated, but like in this particular arena. I mean, we have an author, and like I don't know about the education of Michelle and Saeed. They seem very well spoken too, and I'm sure like talking about books. The other two don't seem like readers to me, which is also an interesting. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's an interesting perspective because the whole point of Canada Reads is to get people to read more, and like people like me who read like 100+ books a year, you know, this isn't going to encourage me to read more. It's going to encourage me to read more Canadian literature. But if you want people to actually read more, and they don't read, that makes sense. I guess having people like that on the show is going to be compelling to other watchers if they do watch. I don't know if you're going to be watching Canada Reads if you're not a reader, but anyways, but it'll be interesting seeing if they get swamped by the eloquence and the education of the more reader defendants. Yeah.
But there is no Olympic gold medal, there's no Canadian Screen Award, there's no fancy culinary prize to win and show off at the end of this. So other than bragging rights, what do you get? Well, listen
My
to
cat's
these
over
words
there.
from our
It's looking
Canada
funny.
Reads authors.
If a two-spirit journey wins, I will take Shayla out to dinner and go in the bush for a nice long walk. And if two-spirit journey doesn't win, I will still take her out and have a little fire and have hot dogs.
Saeed, I've really cherished our time bonding over food and having funny but also cathartic talks about our own personal connections with the themes in Dandelion. If you win, let's go to Southeast Asia together and sit together in an open-air hawker stall to eat everything.
Maggie, we are over a quarter of a century apart in age. I would take you to the best place that plays 90s throwback music so that I can introduce you to the dark and wild side of Generation X.
So Linwood, we should win, I thought maybe you would like to visit the Newfoundland College of Culinary Cuisine. Consommé of northern cod tongues, cheeks, and caudal fins. Next comes mousse a la caribou, or mousse a la mousse. For dessert, we would have bogberry buckle drizzled with a coulis of cod liver oil and sprinkled with the thorns of sea urchins, painstakingly plucked one at a time by certified authentic Newfoundland.
Oh, hi, Michelle. It's your friend, author Emma Hooper. Because I know that you're fierce, but also kind. And I know that you're fair, but also have excellent taste. And you've already made me really, 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 really proud. Go, Michelle, go.
It's very sweet. Also sounds like some of you are going to put on some weight after Canada Reads if some of those things happen.
I hope you won't mind if I bring a bagel just in case.
Just in case. Those were the voices of this year's Canada Reads authors that you just heard. Mane Shikave, Jamie Chayun Liu, Samantha M. Bailey, Wayne Johnston, and Emma Hooper. I'm Ali Hassan. This is Canada Reads on CBC and Sirius XM. Let's get back to the debate. There is a lot going on in the world right now, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are all here because of our collective love of books and literature. We read books and stories to escape, to learn, to feel joy, or to feel understood. And the 5 books here explore themes of human nature in their own way. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask which book best helps us get through this thing that we call life. Michelle, let's start with you.
Well, that's good that you start with me because it's definitely my book.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. No, but truly, this book, Etta and Otto and Russell and James, really is a beautiful way of looking at the poetry of a whole life because we meet the characters when they're young, when they're just becoming adults and people and branching out into the world. And then we skip to the end of their life and they're still about to embark on their last journey. And the way that this book is written, she really, the author jumps back and forth in time. She jumps back and forth between reality and illusion, kind of blending it all in a poetic way that is poignant. And really, I think when I read it, it made me reflect and close my eyes and brought up memories of my life. And so in that way, I think it really is inspiring.
All right, Saeed, what are your thoughts on that?
I really liked the book Etta Otto, especially because it puts you in the shoes of someone with Alzheimer, and especially as a neuroscientist, I thought that it was really well done. I thought that you could almost see
That's
what
his
it
education.
would be like for Etta as she's going through that journey. Sometimes, though, I find that that it was could be confusing for the reader because you're jumping from timeline to timeline, and sometimes Etta doesn't know who she is either, which is actually a strength and a weakness at the same time. Strength because it's definitely a good portrayal of Alzheimer, but weakness because sometimes the reader is kind of confused.
I see. And I totally agree, but I thought it was done in a way, it was executed in a way that was surprising. Like at one point, Etta wakes up in a hospital and as Otto, and looking at herself as Otto, thinking as Otto, until James, the coyote, draws her out of that and into herself again. So it's not like she stayed in that for chapters and chapters, but thank you.
That's exactly the passage of the book I was referring to.
Yeah, where you're
because
like,
I was so confused. I was like, who is that person? I thought it was Etta, but it's not Etta. And I had to read the chapter twice. And after the fact, I thought it was genius, but as I was reading it, I thought it was very confusing.
And that's the thing, okay, as someone whose mother has dementia, I thought it was a genius use of magic realism. That she kind of uses the dementia as a way into magic realism, because there are times where you're seeing the world through Etta and you're like, is this real? Is she just seeing this?
You're not going to tell me that the talking coyote wasn't
around
real,
someone
though.
with dementia, that's
That was totally
reality.
real.
They kind of slip in and out of their version of reality, as you know, as a neuroscientist.
Maggie, let me get you in on this. I've seen you nodding along when both Saeed and Michelle were talking. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that hospital scene was really confusing at first, and I was like, Dad, look at this. I'm kind of confused. And he's like, oh, like, I think this is what happens. And I mean, obviously I don't have the same experiences that you guys do. And I think that comes back to the lack of experience was hard for me. But originally, I think it was the stylistic writing that I had a really hard time. And I think that's the academic in me. On page 11, there's a sentence that's like a paragraph long, and I really struggled with that. I need shorter sentences. And the other thing I think was the lack of quotations to indicate dialogue. And I understand what we're supposed to be in Etta's head, so that makes a little bit of sense. But the fact that it was written from the third person perspective was like you're in Etta's head, but you're also not at the same time, which I thought was a little bit challenging, but an interesting take for sure.
And let me put the question of the debate round to you. Which book helps us get through this thing we call life?
I think Watch Out for Her is the escapism that everyone needs, especially for me. That's kind of been how I've been getting through the year and really enjoying getting immersed in a book. Autobiographies are great, and that's also what I've been reading a lot of as well, but especially with Jenny's Boy. Wayne went through a lot of unfortunate things in his life, and that doesn't really take my mind kind of off what's happening right now. But I think Watch Out for Her is the one where you can really let your emotions go, just read it, and if you feel fear, anger, whatever, it kind of just comes out from being immersed in it.
Linwood,
but it also lacked the realism for
and
me.
Also tell me about thrillers.
There was
as
too
far
much.
as escapism
Asked me
goes.
to suspend my belief.
Well, they're great.
And watch out for her.
that. And, you know, everybody talks about your beach read or whatever book you take to read on the deck at the cottage in the summer. And thrillers serve a really good, useful purpose for that. And a lot of really great thrillers manage to do more. You know, one of my idols was the writer Ross MacDonald, and he could take his concerns about environmentalism or the corruption of wealth, and he could put those themes into a thriller so that he could make a point at the same time as entertaining you. But you make the point that we're in difficult times, and it is. I mean, I worked in the news and newspapers for 30 years, and I'm addicted to news, and I wish I weren't at times because I can't stop watching what's happening. But all of these books, to varying degrees, are about struggle and about overcoming adversity. And I think Shayla's book and mine are, in particular, tackle that because they are true stories. And I guess the hope that I would get out of these is that as bad as things would seem to be now, we've gotten through very bad things before. And even though I'm enough of a cynic to think maybe this is the time it won't happen, but it gives us hope that if Wayne could get through this, if we can get through these kinds of struggles and still move forward, then there is hope for all of us.
I do wonder if they're going to bring up the whole 51st state and all that kind of stuff going on.
I think getting through life, I mean, Wayne and Monet have both gone through some serious challenges, but you can also relate that to all these books here to some degree. I feel like Monet had every right to give up on life, and despite all the challenges she went through, she still honored telling her story and being very vulnerable. And I think whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, having the strength and the vulnerability to be this honest and this real is how you actually get through life. You get through life by sharing your story, by sharing your voice, whether it's traumatic or whether it's joyful. And so I think Monet is a great example of getting through life by reclaiming connection to your story and your own voice, and that's something we all have here, and that's something that we can learn from Monet herself.
Said, what do you think about that?
I agree that reading Monet's book definitely helped me understand, gave me hope that even if you're going through something very, very difficult, there's still hope, there's still light at the end of the tunnel, there's still ways to heal, there's still ways to get better. And that's one of the things that I really liked about the book. And it was hard to read at first, to be honest with you, because she went through so much and she did not deserve any of it. But at least at the end, there was some light. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Thank you, because I totally agree with what you're saying, and coming off of what you were saying as well, Linwood, that...
And you're talking to both Shayla and Linwood.
Thank you for the radio. I was saying thank you to Shayla, but also jumping in on what Linwood was saying, that particularly your two books, The Two-Spirit Journey and Jenny's Boy, deal with real stories. They're autobiographies with difficult, traumatic childhoods. All of our books actually have trauma in childhood. But what I think is unique about Etta and Otto and Russell and James is that there is, for Russell's character, he watches his father die because he, after he loses his shop during the Great Depression, Otto goes off to war and witnesses the carnage of war. So there is this trauma, but it's not thrown in our face or as heavy because of the poetry of the writing and because of the way that we're jumping back and forth in time. So it doesn't become tedious and tiring. And instead,
I think Etta and Otto relied a lot on pre-knowledge of World War II and how horrible it was.
We have 30 seconds
to understand the trauma that Otto went through.
Because you did mention the beauty of the words and the craft, and I know that's something that you're partial to. Your thoughts on what Michelle is saying?
Well, yeah, I think that, why do we read? As you said earlier, we read to be entertained, we read to learn about things. And I think that if you are able to communicate something important, you have a better chance of getting the message across through the beauty of language. And I think that Emma's book does that, and I think that Wayne's book does that. And I think that if you can take a really strong issue, but then craft it in an artful way, you will reach more people.
That's all we have for that round. That is it. Okay, panelists, it's almost the end of day one of Canada Reads. That means our very first elimination is coming up, but not just yet. Yes, I see your eyes enlarged, Michelle. That is the reaction that we all have on day one.
I like that no one's very vitriol yet against
a chance to respond to what's been
each other.
said today.
That does
a final word
happen sometimes.
Into the votes. So we'll go around the table in the same order that we did at the beginning of the show. Linwood, you are up first. Your final word. You have 30 seconds.
I'm going to let it be Wayne's final word. In the novel, or in this memoir, he talks about his grandmother Lucy looking after him. Lucy passes, and he's spending time with his grandfather Ned, who never says a word, never speaks. And they're sitting on the couch, and Ned happens to say to Wayne, "Did you see the mist on the pond this morning, Wayne?" And 7-year-old Wayne says, "Yeah, I did." And when Ned says, "Lucy liked the mist." To me, that's less is more.
Maggie, you have 30 seconds for final words.
The accessibility of Watch Out for Her reaches a variety of audiences, and it brings people into a genre that might not have taken it otherwise. And through that writing and through the ease in which you can write it, you can enjoy what you're reading as opposed to always having a goal, having to learn something. It's through pure enjoyment and the pleasure of it that everyone should read Watch Out for Her.
Okay. With 10 seconds to spare. Maybe we'll give you back that 10 seconds somewhere in the week. Who knows? Thank you, Maggie. Saeed, you are up next. You have 30 seconds.
What I loved about Dandelion is that it makes you feel less alone. When you're an immigrant, you feel isolated. You don't realize that many other people feel the same way, have the same kind of experience. And when I was reading it, I realized that even if Jamie was not the same as me, their family did not immigrate from the same family as mine, I could still relate. I felt less alone. And that's what I really liked about that book. And yeah, that's it.
So the bell started. Yeah, you live in fear of the bell, which is maybe not a bad thing. Thank you, Saeed. Michelle, it's your turn for final words. You have 30 seconds.
Emma Hooper has given Canadians a gift, a love note with Etta and Otto and Russell and James. She dives into important themes like identity, who are we when our relationships are stripped away, who are we when the people we love forget us. And she's challenging tired tropes around aging and dementia. She's exploring our history and even our vast geography in a way that feels fresh and exciting. But the writing in this book, like I said, is like a wide open prairie. There is space for the reader to breathe, to come to our own conclusions, and maybe to arrive at a place more profound than the author even intended.
Thank you, Michelle. Shayla, it is your turn for final words. You have 30 seconds.
You know, what I really loved about A Two-Spirit Journey is it felt like I was sitting with my kukum, my grandmother. Monet has a way of inviting you into her world, but also making you feel like your world is also a part of that. She also inspired me to be very vulnerable and courageous and resilient, no matter what challenges I go through in my life. I also am reminded by the love that she has for other people, no matter where you come from. If you met Monet herself, I'm sure she would support you and give you the greatest pep talk, and that's what I love about this book.
Thank you, Shayla. Okay, panelists, that's it for today's debate.
So I feel like
to vote.
the book that usually is most talked about gets debated or gets knocked off.
Please mark an X
and I feel like
beside the book that you want to
I think like Watch Out for Her might be eliminated. A Two-Spirit Journey wasn't talked about as much though, so
from the Canada Reads team will
who knows, maybe that might go to.
I'd like
But
to remind you,
I'd be
in
happy
some
with either
cases,
like
maybe tell you for the
Dandelion,
first
Edda
time,
and Otto,
there
or
are
Jenny's
no
Boy
secret ballots on Canada Reads.
winning. Those like were the three that
Which title will
I liked.
be
Edda
the
and Otto
first to go?
being like
Will it be Jenny's
just
Boy
like the
by
most
Wayne
well
Johnston?
written.
Linwood Barclay is championing that
But
memoir.
the other two were
Will
really
it
good
be
as well.
Watch Out for Her by Samantha M. Bailey, Maggie McNeil.
And I just want to make a point about her talking about like accessibility and like escapism in Watch Out for Her. What it felt like for me in Watch Out for Her was that, and they said this before, like the characters, the motivation, and then the plot coming before the characters, is that I didn't feel like the characters were as believable. And if I can't believe the characters, then I can't escape into the book as well. If that makes sense. So like they felt like very two-dimensional, but she was you could see that she was trying to make more of it, but it didn't succeed. Yeah. That was my issue with Watch Out for Her. One of them.
Is supporting that thriller. Will it be Dandelion by Jamie Chai Yun Liu? This novel is being championed by Saeed M. Dahoma. Or will it be Edda and Otto and Russell and James by Emma Hooper? This novel was selected by Michelle Morgan. Or will it be A Two-Spirit Journey by Mani Shikabe, written with Mary Louisa Plummer, a memoir chosen by Shayla Stonechild? I feel like there was a
I love seeing all the tabs in everyone's books
with which we answered here. Some people quite quick. Shayla, I know you took a little more time to make sure that your box was the right one.
It'll be interesting to see how much of them vote strategically as opposed to which book they really think should be left out.
I have the ballots. Michelle Morgan, we start with you. How did you vote?
I voted for Watch Out.
And when you say for, you do mean
Against.
voted to eliminate Watch Out for Her. Yes, Maggie McNeil, how did you vote?
Against Edda and Otto and Russell and James.
One vote against Watch Out for Her, and one vote against Otto and Edda and Otto and Russell and James. Saeed M. Dahoma, how did you vote?
I voted against Watch Out for Her.
There's 2 votes against Watch Out for Her and 1 vote against Edda and Otto and Russell and James. Linwood Barclay, how did you vote?
I voted out Watch Out for Her.
And with 3 votes against it, that does mean that Watch Out for Her has been eliminated from Canada Reads. Shayla, as I mentioned, there are no secret ballots. How did you vote?
Watch Out for Her.
Watch Out for Her. All right, well, we have about 2.5 minutes. Maggie, you came in here with a challenge ahead of you, as many people who support a new genre that we don't have on this show face. As Linwood said, he was excited to see it here, and I think many people would have been. This is obviously not
This
the
wasn't a
result.
good thriller.
A competitive performer such as yourself, a competitive athlete, would have liked to have had, but if you've had time to, in the 18 seconds since it happened, if you've had time to process it, if you'd like to say something about the book.
Yeah, I'm just honored to have the first thriller on the show. It's great that we're in, 24th year, you said, that the show is expanding to other genres. Obviously, as an Olympic champion, I always want to win. That's always the goal. But as you said, there are no prizes, trophies, medals, or anything, so that hurts a little bit less. But no, I'm very excited. I've had a great relationship with Sam, and I've really gotten to know her, and I'm excited to read more of her books after this and hopefully bring more awareness to thrillers in general. But I'm also excited to just be on the show and have this experience. My heart rate was increasing. I was getting a little stressed. It's been a while since I felt like that, so this has been fun.
I will add that, this book, Watch Out for Her, made it to the top 10 of the CBC's bestseller list, became a bestseller, first thriller on the shows we mentioned, and Samantha Bailey.
I think with the current reading climate,
it's been one of the great joys
it was a
of her
good
life
choice.
has been on
Last year
Canada Reads.
they had a
It's
romance.
a feel-good
so
thing overall. I'm not sure if that
same,
comforts
like,
you in the moment.
those
but
are like
I
the
hope it will.
highest
And also,
selling genres.
We'll
and
talk more about this.
what I
with
think
our
are
TV
high
and
selling
web
genres.
audience.
I don't have
We
any
have
data
from
to
New
back that
Radio
up.
in just a few seconds. But you are a free agent, which means the rest of you will have some begging, pleading, and convincing to do. But that is a goodbye to Watch Out for Her by Samantha Bailey. And we're also saying goodbye to the folks listening on CBC Radio right now. If you are online or watching on television, we'll have a few more minutes for our panelists. There are 4 books left, and they are Jenny's Boy, Etta and Otto and Russell and James, A Two-Spirit Journey, and Dandelion. We have 3 days and 3 eliminations to go.
I like how well read the books look too.
I'll see you
I
soon.
looked at
until
the
we find the one
Dandelion
book all
copy.
of Canada should read.
It's like well read. I like seeing books that have evidence of them having been read.
Today's debate is over, but we are going to talk about what went down today. And we've talked to you a little bit about how you're feeling, Maggie, and I won't dig in too far into that. I think that you offered a very composed and wonderful assessment of what this all meant to you. But I do want to go around the table and talk about Watch Out for Her and the impact that it might have had on you as a reader. For me, I was hosting The Next Chapter for 1 year, and I was only because of that introduced to the thriller genre. And it's very different and very exciting, and it does ruin your sleep. From a personal note, I was not, all of a sudden I'm hearing noises that I've never heard before at night. There is that to contend with, but it's exciting. Gets your adrenaline going, and I wanted to get some of your thoughts. We have about 5 minutes for a chat, and I wanted to talk about this book. Shayla, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. I felt like I was watching an episode thriller of a show. I really liked, I think it's Holly's character, the younger woman. I liked her. She just had more of a multifaceted personality, I think, than Sarah, which I enjoyed. But that being said, I wish she dove in a little bit as to why Sarah was the way she was and was like obsessive and wondering
the amount of
watching her
paranoia and stuff around her was unexplained.
Yeah, a little more to Sarah, but for me also halfway through I think it became predictable. I knew that the cliffhangers were coming at the end of each chapter, and then the last at the ending with Alexis being the one that is behind everything. I didn't feel like I knew her very well, so I was like just so curious as to why she did everything, and it just felt kind of a little bit random because I didn't have the.
I do think that we'll just so that we don't put Maggie on the defensive again.
Oh yeah.
We'll treat it like a hug.
I really loved it because it was like I was watching an episode, and I was so curious about what was happening on the next chapter. So
yeah.
I think it's really cool that you're by far the youngest here, right? Are you? Yeah. And you picked like the like the funnest read, and the most accessible, and I think that that's great because a lot of people were so excited. Like on my social media, people were really excited to read it. It's going to be very widely read, and I thought there was some really interesting nuance. Like I really actually found it fascinating, and I don't think I've read a relationship like that before between Sarah and Holly because it's like an erotic thriller, and there was almost like attraction between them. Like they were both really like magnetized, but it wasn't sexual, but it almost was. Like they were like magnetized towards each other and kind of
public radio.
Thank you. But it was an interesting relationship, and I thought very nuanced and thought provoking.
Said, what about you?
I loved the book. It was so fun, so easy to read. I also loved. It could definitely be a TV show. Like I could see it being a TV show. And what I really liked is Sarah's character, because I'm anxious, and it felt like I was like you were looking into the brain of an anxious person who keeps, imagining things, and sometimes she's right, sometimes she's wrong, and
I want to say more about Etta and Otto and Russell and James. And in regards to the readability, I actually thought that one was super readable. They talked about a confusing chapter. There's going to be spoilers. Where Etta, she has dementia, and she wakes up in the hospital, but it's suddenly like she's Otto. And a lot of them said that was really confusing, but there are a lot of hints dropped. There are a lot of hints dropped before that chapter comes, that you should know, that a reader who is like paying attention should know that this is what's going on. And then that all really ties into the end as well. So I was compulsively, I read that book in like, well, it was 2 days, but I could have read it in one day if I hadn't gone to work. Yeah, so that's just my opinion in regards to readability, is that Etta and Otto and Russell and James was also very readable, as was Jenny's Boy. I do have a lot of problems with repetition, and I didn't find it in there. Each time, his days, there was a little repetition in his days, but each time there was something different happening in those days. Like each day, yes, he went over to his grandmother's house, and they had their routine, but each time the routine was a little different. Right? So it wasn't straightforward repetition, it was keeping an eye out for those little differences that kept it readable. Yeah, just a little rant there. We'll continue with the last 3 minutes of this.
Brain just goes into every direction. I thought that was a great depiction of anxiety.
Right, Linwood, I end with you, not just because of the table order, but because you are a thriller writer, as I mentioned off the top.
First of all, I want to congratulate Maggie. I want to congratulate Samantha. I have, first of all, I think that a thriller can certainly win Canada Reads someday. It wasn't Samantha's turn yet for that sort of thing, but I mean, I've written about 25 thrillers, and I've been, over the years, shortlisted or nominated a lot of times for things, and pretty much lost all of them. And so I know what that's like, but the thing is, just to be able to write a book is, it's not as easy as it looks. And so hats off to Samantha. This is, I think, her second novel, and I'm sure there's many more to come, and there are going to be many more opportunities to get the kind of recognition that one wants. And so this is a really good way to get launched and get going. I mean, to get this kind of attention for a second novel is great news and bodes well for her.
Yeah, and we should note that Linwood did say that a thriller should win one day, and then mentioned casually that he's written 25, sort of telegraphing the message to future Canadian panelists on this show that, hey,
so just the check is in the mail.
Yeah, and I will say, obviously, day one eliminations, you join a wonderful group of people who've gone out, and including Margaret Atwood and Kamal El-Soleili, and in recent years, Carly Fortune, whose book was also, a brand new genre, which we've never featured. So that is a wrap on Canada Reads today. I want to say thank you to our panelists, Linwood Barclay, Maggie McNeil, Saeed M. Dahoma, Michelle Morgan, and Shayla Stonechild. Not an easy thing to go through this competition in general, but certainly day one is a little tougher. But you're all coming back tomorrow. I'm also coming back. I'm Ali Hassan. Until then, read on, Canada.
Okay, so that's it. I don't have much more to say that I haven't said during the show. Try and do this again tomorrow and for the rest of the days. A little later in the day because I work and then go to the gym and then I'm starving and all that kind of stuff. So life has to happen first and then Canada Reads. And next thing that's going to happen right now is reading. So thank you for joining me, watching Canada Reads. Just let me know what book you want to win or get eliminated next episode. Thank you for watching.